Hey, what's up, guys? It's Dan from Spilling the Tea, a Pico podcast. Thanks for joining me. Today, I was joined by Jesse Giovinazzo, and he is a realtor, a new realtor with Home Group Realty under the Beth and Ryan team. He comes to us with some insight in doing his own renovation and renting out his property and what it's like to go through that process and to be a first-time landlord. So some really great insight there. And then we jump into the Guelph market, the data, the stats, what's going on. Hope you enjoy it. Grab a tea, and we'll catch you in the next one. Hey guys, welcome to Spilling the Tea, a podcast brought to you by Pico Mortgages. I'm your host, Dan Johannes, and in this series, we'll be interviewing some really interesting entrepreneurs, real estate professionals, and really anyone that's got a story that I think is worth sharing with you, the viewers. So sit back, relax. I hope you enjoy it, and please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining me on another episode of Spilling the Tea, a Pico podcast. I'm your host, Dan Johannes. Today, I am joined by Jesse Giovinazzo. I hope I pronounced that right.
Pretty close.
Oh, I'm close. All right, right on. So Jesse is a licensed realtor with Home Group Realty. He's a graduate of Brock University, and he kind of majored in his honors in BBA, so business administration, and he had a concentration in marketing. So Jesse recently just purchased his first house and decided to do his own house hack on it, and he converted his basement into a legal duplex. So this undertaking kind of gave him an experience into the whole process of doing that conversion, then also being a first-time landlord. So Jesse, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. And yeah, I'd love to kind of get your opinion. So why don't you kind of talk me through it? Let's start off with, like, how did you get into real estate?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast. Is when you reached out, I was like, this is great to get some exposure, have a conversation, kind of explain my why I got into it and how I got into it, and hopefully kind of give some knowledge of what's happening in the market. But so yeah, I started actually at Brock in accounting. And after first semester, I was like, this is not for me. I just wasn't enjoying it. I like working with numbers. And I like the accounting side of things, but I just couldn't see myself doing that job every single day. So I finished out first year in the accounting program. And then in second year, I switched into just the general business, but I was up ahead two credits and then behind two credits. So it kind of worked out. It didn't put me behind at all. And then, I kind of decided marketing was where I wanted to be. And then in later years, I was taking some, more of the social media marketing, internet marketing, stuff like that I was really enjoying. And in my second year, I was, funny enough, at a party and ran into somebody who had already, was out of school when they were doing real estate, and started talking with this guy. And he had originally started in residential and then moved to commercial. And he was just kind of filling me in on like what it was like and what his job was and that sort of thing. And so kind of since then, I was like, sounds something that would be really interesting, but didn't really put much thought into it or even into it being a career. And then right out of graduating out of school, I was offered a 4-month contract with Skyjack, which is a Linamar company, and as like just a summer placement that turned into full-time job, and it was in logistics, and so I was kind of in charge of local inbound part shipments within Canada, as well as all overseas inbound part shipments. So, all the shipping containers and all that sort of thing. So I did that for a couple of years and was kind of at the point in my career where I was like, I need to change. I need to, get to that next level. And applied for a job at a company called Shipper B. And I was there for 2 months. And then it was a startup company. It had only been operating for about 2 years and 1 year at like, full operational. And so I thought, I'll take the chance on this new company. And after 2 months, they closed the doors.
Oh no,
And
bad timing. Yeah.
Bad timing. So this would have been last year, February. So I'm sitting there trying to think of what to do. I applied for lots of different jobs, and both that job and the Skyjack had been in operations. And I was like, you know what, maybe this is a good opportunity to now get into marketing. Because that was obviously what the goal was. I just kind of, you kind of get comfortable in what you were doing. And it wasn't that I was not enjoying it. I was enjoying the logistics side, but thought I'll make a change. And, we're in the pandemic, so trying to find a job wasn't the easiest, and months went by and didn't find anything. And so I thought, well, what other options do I have? And so I bought my house the year before. And me and my brother had bought it together, and we had used Beth and Ryan Waller with the Home Group.
I had Ryan on a few weeks ago too. Awesome guy. I mean, he's
him and Beth are great. They're great people. I love working with them. So I'm on their team. But anyways, I reached out to him, just said, hey, can I shadow you for a day or two just to see what your day-to-day life is like as a realtor? And he said, sure, yeah, no problem. Like, it's kind of hard. It's not a typical like 9-to-5 job. So it's hard to just, you can't just come in this day and you can shadow me for the day. So, I had a conversation, kind of filled me in on what it was like, and kind of walked me through a couple things here and there. And then he offered me if I wanted to work part-time for him and Beth, just helping with some admin and marketing things. And until I found, another job. And I said, great, you know what, that's great. That would be a huge help. And did that for a little while, and I was really enjoying it. And so he said, why don't you get your license? Like, if that's something you want to do, get your license, you can join our team. And so, here we are. I started that process, I think it was in May of last year. And because I was only kind of working part-time with them, I was able to really prioritize the schooling aspect of it. Yeah. And I got through all of it in, I think it was about 6 months or whatever. I was done by November, fully licensed, ready to go by,
that's got to be a record. November. That's got to be a record, Jesse. That's crazy. 6 months to from the time you decided, okay, pen to paper and let's do this, and graduation. Good for you. I mean, that shows a lot about, your drive, and when you want to get something done, you get it done. So, and it's interesting to see, like, you kind of had that, I guess you took a pit stop in the accounting world. I did that too. And it was one that I was like, all right, keep moving on here.
Exactly.
It's not something that I felt really was my calling either. But I think one of the most important things is setting yourself up with a mentor, and you being able to reach out to Beth and Ryan and say, hey guys, I like what you're doing. Can I shadow you? I did essentially the same thing getting into the mortgage brokering world, where I reached out to people that I was like, hey, you know what? You guys are doing some fantastic stuff. I'd love to mentor with you and just get an idea of what is it you do and what makes your process so special. So I think there's a lot to be said to in anything. When you get a mentor involved, it really kind of pushes you to that next level there. So then you and your brother bought this property, and in the meantime, you're kind of like fixing it up and stuff. And what was the catalyst to go from, hey, homeowner to homeowner / landlord? Like, what was that like?
So that was a priority from when we started looking.
Right.
We knew we wanted to do that. Obviously the huge incentive is you have money coming in every month to help pay your mortgage.
Right.
And so, we knew we ran our numbers, and we knew we could do it without the income from the basement, but we're like, why, it's just the two of us. We have 2 floors to ourselves.
Right. If you're not using the basement and it can be, fixed up and start generating income to help offset the expenses, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
So
exactly.
was it a how long did it take you to kind of like start to finish? And then when you started the process of renovating the basement, like what was your jumping off point? Was it completely unfinished, or did you just need to kind of do a few things to make it a legal dwelling?
So it had a bedroom already, and it had a washroom. So we were kind of lucky in that respect that we didn't have to be doing, too much configuring that way.
Right.
And it had one massive large room that was currently at the time being used as like a rec room. And it had this like big wooden fireplace with like brick mantle and like all this, but it was wood paneling. Like it was very, 70s.
That 70s show. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started in, I think it was May of 2020. And we worked at it pretty hard. At that time both my brother and I were working full time still. So it was, and we did, I would say 99% of the work ourselves.
Oh, wow. Well, did you guys
Yeah.
have a background in carpentry and doing all of that stuff, or what?
So my brother's a licensed electrician.
Perfect.
And so he has the experience of just being on construction sites, like work sites, and seeing how other people do their job. And he's also a very, handy guy. So he kind of led it and in the like work respect, and then I led it more in like, getting the permits and doing that side of things. I
Right.
organized all of that.
The logistics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then so we took it right down to studs. Obviously we had to break up the floor to get the kitchen in there.
Wow.
So the only thing we paid for someone to do was we had to do some HVAC work, a plumber, and someone to do the taping and the mudding for the drywall. So it was quite the project. I think it took us, we started in about May, in May or June, and by December we were pretty much like ready to go. There was like little things here and there. And we kind of burnt ourselves out. We went a little too hard, too quickly, right at the get-go. And after, it was probably about 4 or 5 months of just steady grinding it out, we kind of lost interest.
Yeah.
We never really stopped, but it was just like less of an incentive to work after work. It was more weekends only. So it kind of progressed a little bit slower. And our goal was to have someone in there by January 1st. And then that kind of came and went. So by the time we actually got it all rented, it was April. So almost a year, 10 months maybe, from starting to having someone occupy it. But I guess that's kind of the downside of doing it yourself when you're still working at the same time.
Right. It's like 2 full-time jobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could really be taxing on you. I could imagine. So if you were to go back and do this project again, what would you change?
I think I would hire people to do some more things of it.
Right.
But at the same time, I really liked doing it ourselves. It kind of allowed me to see what the whole process was like and what actually needed to be done in the nitty gritties of, building code. And like, we had to add another window. So we actually had to cut our brick out and install a new window so that it met egress building code. And then there's things that like, I would have never found out had I not done this, that Ontario building code is different than the municipality. Your municipality might have a different, standards that you need. So like the amount of opening on an egress window is different for Ontario versus Guelph, and Guelph actually needs more. So like things like that, which now I can have all this knowledge of how this is done and I can pass on to my clients. So from like a time perspective, yeah, it would have been nice to have someone do it. I can get a tenant in there much quicker. But now looking back at it, it's like, hey, you know what? I learned so much more than I would have if I just hired a contractor.
Yeah, that's a great point, because there's a lot of, like you said, tons of hands-on experience in doing a project like this that is so transferable, because you're showing people houses and now you kind of know what to look for. And if there's something that comes up, let's say, for example, those windows were not to code. I mean, I'm sure that could be a negotiating part when it comes time to put an offer in, right? Or something like that. Like it has real world sort of benefits to be able to say, hey, you know what, this isn't done to code, or this is a great option, or look at the layout, or whatever it is. It really kind of adds that additional sort of layer of insight when it comes to looking at property. So that's a good point. That's pretty invaluable.
It came in handy actually right away in my career. My very first buyer client was purchased a home with a 1-bedroom basement apartment. However, it wasn't legal. And so the previous owner had started the whole process of, working with the city and getting it legal and kind of doing what needed to be done. So I was able to look at what was done and, you know, what my experience was, and kind of provide my clients with a general idea. No, not specific, but like, you know, okay, this needs to be done. This needs to be done. This is done. Okay, that's good. And kind of give them an idea of what they would be looking at before even buying the house, so that they
Right.
have an idea of, okay, well, this is going to be, you know, roughly this much to renovate, or this much, but, you know, just so that they knew what they were getting into before purchasing. So
Yeah, that's great.
the knowledge came in, you know, experience came in handy right away, which was fantastic.
Yeah, you give them a good baseline for that. So that's great. Did it come in, and can I ask, did it come in on budget? And the timeline? I know you mentioned you kind of, like, you guys slowed down, and you were aiming for January. You weren't too far off that mark, but as far as
Yeah.
your budget goes, was that close?
It was a little bit more. We came in above what we were expecting, but
Mm.
at the same time, we also did more than what we were expecting.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah, that's good.
the whole house, like upstairs, downstairs, is very, you know, was very dated. And we had planned on focusing our attention on the basement first, obviously, because that's going to be you know, an income producing area of the house. And then we started to think a little bit more, and we're like, okay, well, the bathroom upstairs is very poorly designed. We want to do the renovation there eventually. It would actually make more sense just to do it now, because
Mm,
we're not having to then open up ceilings in the basement to rework plumbing, that sort of thing. So we ended up
right.
taking on a little bit more, and then as we were kind of going through the whole process in the basement, we decided, you know, we wanted to get you know, a little bit more premium finishes. So we had like a custom Barzati kitchen put in, and like things like that that we thought might help attract you know, a better tenant.
Right.
And then maybe we could, you know, ask a little bit more of a premium on rent, that sort of thing. Um, so I think we were pretty close to what we thought. But yeah, obviously, you know, it's hard to predict 100% where
Yeah.
you're going to be, but we were fairly close. I would say maybe we were $10,000 more than what we thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's not bad. I
not
mean,
huge.
I
Yeah.
think it's very rare that anyone really comes in on budget, especially these days. So speaking of, so trying to attract a higher, I guess, going upstream when it comes to finding a tenant to go
Yeah.
in there. What was your experience with that? And maybe speak a little bit on that whole process of now being a landlord. Is there, you know, a few things that you could maybe tell our audience in your experience to look out for, or yeah, and
Yeah, for sure. So we opted to not use a realtor. At that point when we were going through all this, I hadn't gotten my license yet. So and we kind of just decided, you know, I think we can do it ourselves. We don't
right,
need to, you know, have someone. So we decided to do that. Whether that was the right decision or not, I don't know. But uh, we, you know, posted our ads. We made sure we took some pretty nice photos, well lit, so that, you know, that was the biggest thing. Is you want to make sure it's the same. And it's the same when you're listing a house for sale. Like, you know, the first time people are seeing the house is, or the apartment is online through pictures. So you
100%.
need to make
Yeah,
sure your pictures are good. You know, the everything's lit up, you know, tidied, that sort of thing. And then once we started to get some emails of people we're interested in, it was kind of an interesting way, because we're in the pandemic. So we're trying to limit the number of people that are coming into our home. But we still want to be able to meet with these people to see what they're like. So it was interesting. So we did some virtual tours where we would do, you know, like a Zoom call or a Google Meet,
right. Yeah,
and have a conversation that way. We did have some people come through, walk through. Um, and then if they were interested in applying for, you know, filling out an application, and we thought that there would be a good fit just from that first interaction, I then had made up a application form and, you know, got that filled out. And then I always made sure to call if it was someone that we were really, you know, thinking about, okay, this would be a solid option. Made sure I called all their references. We asked
right.
for, you know,
Okay.
two or more references. Make sure we call, you know, personal references, their work, their previous like landlords, that sort of thing, and just saw like, was this person, from a work, are they on time at work, what's their job, that sort of thing. And then from their landlords, did they pay on time, are they clean, what are they like as a tenant, are they loud, that sort of thing. Because it's different. It's not like you own a 4-unit complex and you live off site. Like, we're living directly above the person that's renting our basement. So we have to have that respect that goes both ways. Obviously we're going to make sure we're not too loud for them, and we're hope that they would do the same for us, right?
Yeah, they
So
definitely have to be a proper fit for, I guess, your lifestyle too. And it's a good point, because being able to kind of do the background and make sure that it's it's someone that is, that you want to live with, because ultimately, yeah, you're going to see the people that are living there a little bit
yeah,
more
exactly.
frequently than if you were off site. So it's so important to
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
do that. Now, so you talked about calling references. I've seen applications where they do sort of, credit checks. They want a letter of employment. They want a pay stub, all of that stuff. And obviously, it's a little bit more difficult once a tenant is in. If you do have a problem tenant, I've seen this in the eviction process or trying to work with them, and that's always a concern I've heard from, some of my clients too. Is, what do we do if we have a problem tenant? Obviously, you're fairly early on in the whole process, but is there anything there that you did in addition, or took into consideration when you were looking for a tenant?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that we made sure of is we used like the Ontario standard lease, because it becomes if there is an issue and you don't have that standard lease, then you've just created yourself even more issues.
Right.
So in Ontario, there's a standard lease that needs to be used. So obviously we made sure we used that. But I think there's only so much you can do. You don't really know this person that's coming into your going to be living in your place. So you try and do as much background checks as possible. We didn't go as far as asking for pay stubs or getting a credit check or anything like that. We did ask what your expected annual income is going to be, just to have some sort of idea of
Baseline there. Yeah.
can their income support the rent, that sort of thing. I've seen like you were saying, there's you can ask for a lot more information than what we did. Maybe it's a little old school. I found just having a conversation with someone, and just kind of laying out your expectations and kind of just trying to read what their reactions are.
Yeah.
I just did it more of that way, like more of that
Yeah.
conversational aspect of it. And
That's a good
we
point.
got lucky. We've had our tenant here just over a year. He's staying for another year.
Awesome.
Pays on time or
Yeah.
early, super respectful guy. So I think the biggest thing, biggest suggestion I'd put out there is don't, go with the first person.
Right. Yeah. And I
like,
think, especially in this market too, we've got, the demand for good quality places to rent is fairly high. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Is don't just pick the first person that comes through the door, and really do your homework when it comes to vetting people and making sure, especially if it's in a place you're living too, that they're a good match
yeah,
for.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit
Exactly. As
about,
much as you would like to just start getting that income in right
yeah, right.
away, it's like,
Yeah.
let's take a second. And you know what? We almost gave the unit to somebody else before our current tenant had even applied. And we kind of hesitated for a bit and decided, we were going to keep searching, and I'm super happy we did, because I'm sure the other people would have been just as fine, but it was a couple versus, just a single guy. So, it would have been 2 people living in there instead of just one. And the unit can support that, but now you have an extra person that's in, in the basement, and, they're going to be having conversation. So it's going to be a little bit louder. So I think take your time, really make sure you do your research on who is applying to live in your house. And then the other thing that could be different too is if you aren't, if you don't have a fully legal separate unit, and you're just, more of like a roommate style, one thing to note is the Landlord Tenant Act doesn't apply. So if you share a kitchen and or bathroom with your tenants, then the Landlord Tenant Board does not, apply for that person. So you can, as a homeowner, you have a lot more rights than you do if you have a
That's good
separate
to
unit.
know.
So that's something,
Something to
know as
consider
well.
if you're just looking for some additional income. Maybe you've got
Yeah.
a kid that's gone off to school and empty nesters, and they want some company too. They're not
Yeah.
giving away as
Or
much.
you're, a young guy buying your first, or young person buying your first home, and have 2 extra rooms, and
Right. Yeah.
rent it out to a couple friends, and you have a lot more rights. If something goes sour or goes south with that relationship, you can get them out of your house much easier than if it was in a separate unit.
No, those are great points. So you're based in Guelph there. What
Yes.
what are you noticing in the market? What's changed?
So if we're comparing it from like beginning of the year when things were crazy, the last bunch of months, things have kind of slowly been decreasing in terms of the sale price. Inventory has been booming. So I pull data every Wednesday morning for the Guelph market, and I do a YouTube video just kind of explaining what's happening in the market. So I pulled some data yesterday.
What's your YouTube handle?
It's just Beth and Ryan Waller.
Okay, right on.
It goes on their YouTube channel. They already had a following, and I figured,
if you
why
got an
not
audience, you may as well push it out to the audience there. That's a great
continue
idea.
with that. Exactly.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that. So if anyone wants to check out some of Jesse's stuff on there, they can do that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So every Wednesday, the data comes out, you analyze the data, and then you do sort of a market. So we're Thursday now. We're filming on Thursday. What happened yesterday?
So last Wednesday, we saw up until June 22nd, we were, June 29th, the number of listings in Guelph was on a steady increase. And so June 22nd, we were peaking at 312 active listings. And then last week, the 29th, we dropped down to 298. And then yesterday we were at 292. So it looks like we are starting to have an inventory decrease, which is, pretty normal with coming into summer months. Kind of things slow down. People, don't want to be, they're going on vacation and whatnot. But one interesting thing that we noticed was we've had, ever since the market started to change from that aggressive sellers market to more of a balanced market, we were seeing a number of listings canceled every week and then relisted. But what we noticed is last week there was 29 listings canceled, but then the inventory dropped. So what that's kind of showing is that these sellers that were canceling and then relisting at a lower price or a different price point are maybe just giving up. The average of those 29 listings that were canceled, the average days on market was 41 days. So they've been up for well over a month, and obviously didn't sell. So what it's kind of showing is maybe these sellers are thinking, we've had our house for sale for over a month, haven't been able to sell it. Let's either put it on pause, we'll wait until the fall, we'll enjoy our summer.
Right.
It's taxing on sellers, having people come through your house all the time. You have to keep it in pristine condition because you never know when a showing is going to happen. So I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, you know what, let's just hold off and we'll wait until another time. Maybe the market will change a little bit, or they're deciding, we can't get what we wanted. We were looking at the prices in, January, February, March, and, these crazy high prices, and that's what we wanted. Clearly the market is showing that's not going to happen anymore. We'll just stay here.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months, next couple of weeks, if the listings continue to decrease and what's happening with those solds. And even last week, we saw only 20 houses sell from Wednesday to Wednesday. And of those 20 that sold, only 10% sold over asking. Whereas, in January, February, March, we were seeing 95% of houses sell over asking.
Yeah, that's a substantial change, eh?
Yeah,
From
and even the
95 to 10.
number of houses sold, like 20 houses sold in 1 week, that's the lowest we've seen since early January, when inventory was at like 50 houses.
Wow.
We're at
Wow.
almost 300, active listings, only 20 are selling. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's definitely things are starting to change a little bit. The last 2 weeks have showed that.
I think for
So
some
yeah,
buyers, this is a great opportunity though for them. Like if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines, I've had clients that have reached out and they're like, "Hey, you remember me? Yeah, I was the one
yeah,
that kind of put everything on pause when bidding was just through the roof." So some of them are starting to come back out, and I think part of this too is they're just taking their time and they're seeing what's available out there. They don't have to kind of compromise as much as they were 6 months ago when it comes to what they're interested in, their must-haves or their Instagram house. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely promising for buyers, and like you said, we're getting more into a balanced market here. The one thing that I've noticed is still prominent is the appraisals. So people that are, luckily it's only, like you said, 10% now, that are buying over asking. Hopefully that sort of like mindset has started to change for a lot of people, and they've realized that, hold on, this is a different market. We don't have to go in guns blazing, over asking, remove all conditions, because that is a very difficult situation to be in, especially when the market is changing like it is now. So I'd love to get your opinion too in a few weeks. Why don't we circle back and see what's going on a little bit later on this summer, and if
yeah,
this
for
trend
sure.
continues, let's try to pull out the crystal ball and see if we can figure out what's the best
Yeah,
for
we'll shake
everyone.
it
That'd
up
be,
and see what happens.
yeah, that magic 8 ball.
Yeah,
Jesse, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate having your insight here, and I think you
yeah, of
gave
course.
our audience some really good information, some solid stuff when it comes to doing your own renovations on a property, and then also putting it up for rent and being a landlord. So some valuable stuff in there, guys. I'm going to leave some links below for Jesse. If you need to reach out to him, feel free to do that. And yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks again.